For highly seasonal products, what we recommend is you want to get going a little bit before that peak happens. So with advertising, what we typically say is for my molecular set, maybe a month prior, I'd really start getting more and more aggressive on my advertising, especially for my main search terms. And while the volume wouldn't be there because we haven't started increasing on the peak yet, what I can do is I can establish my initial dominance in that keyword or that search term by getting more aggressive. This helps get me more data, so I'm better optimized going into that peak period. But the other key thing is that what it does is if I can get that sales velocity up prior to that peak coming, I'm going to be sitting in a better position for relevancy for my ads and also for ranking too.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I am really stoked for this conversation because we're going to be talking about how to actually use the data that Amazon is giving us. So I'm really stoked to have on Joe Shelerud. He is the founder of AdAdvance. And I have been following him on LinkedIn for a while, and he puts out some insanely good detailed data, but then also really marries a lot of it back to, how can you use it? What are these insights? And so, yeah, I mean, it is data analysis and prioritizing data, something near and dear to my heart. So I was really stoked when you brought up the subject of data utilization.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And by the way, too, you are putting out awesome content. You're one of my must-follow people for Amazon advertising. So, yeah, thank you for all the great content you're putting out, too, and really happy and excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely link your LinkedIn below. Like I said, the insights you put out, I feel like are much more detailed than mine. But either way, I'm glad you're getting something out of what content I put out as well. I'd love for you to just for those of you who aren't aware of you, what you do. I'd love for you to give just a quick overview of AdAdvance and what you all focus on.
Yeah. So I'll just give you a quick snapshot. So I actually started in the Amazon ecosystem in about 2014 timeframe. I started as a seller, and I had developed this brand where I was selling these organic chemistry molecular model kits. They're used for organic chemistry courses. I'm a chemical engineer by nature. And so started building that brand. And as I was building that brand, really started digging into my advertising. And like a good chemical engineering nerd, I started to develop my own tools to optimize my ads. And as I started digging into it more, figured, I could probably help some other sellers with their advertising. And so that's how AdAdvance got started. Really kind of the foundation or the core or what we're known for is those deep data insights. How can you implement them? How can you put them into action? And what's been crazy lately with the ecosystem is there's more and more information available. And so Elizabeth and I wanted to talk through what's some key reports that we can use right now, and how do you put those into action? Because that tends to be the harder part now is we have so much information available. What can you truly do with it? And just walk through the quick steps on how is this actually helpful for our business as a whole versus, hey, here's another cool report, but we don't have good action on how to use it. So that's kind of what I like taking is getting the data, but then, all right, how do you actually implement it?
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I think that's especially something that we've also tried to puzzle through. We ended up somehow along the way, managing several clothing brands, advertising for that. And so a lot of the reports, sometimes give it on a SKU or ASIN level, and one of the reports that we have that's pre-generated gave certain data points on a SKU level, and then brand owner is okay, that's great, but with so many SKUs, it just doesn't end up being as actionable. So I definitely agree with you, bringing it back to, okay, this information is great, but how can I use it, to really better my advertising or my business in general. And I love that you kind of brought up the search query report, which is definitely a huge buzz, but I think a lot of people feel like they should be using it. They've heard, a million different people talk about it and like, this sounds amazing. And then probably logged on, looked at it once or twice and gone, all right, great. I don't see how I can fit that into, what I'm doing.
Sure. Yeah. So I can definitely dig into that. And by the way, too, like, for those getting going or those even trying to optimize ads right now, like when I started back in, 2014 timeframe, it was just sponsored products. And there was like a couple reports you could pull. Like it was so much easier. And now,
Yeah.
you just look at the list of information that's available and it can be so overwhelming. So when we look at like one report that's like really helpful in my opinion, it's the search query performance report. And Elizabeth, I know you posted a lot about this too. Like we're really pumped up about it. And the key reason is there's a lot of really cool data that's involved with it, and also a lot of great ways that we can put it into action. So for those who aren't familiar with the Search Query Performance Report, it's within Brand Analytics in your Seller Central account. You can pull it up and you can sort by either a brand report or you can take it down to an ASIN view, and then you can segment it into different time periods. And the key thing that this is so cool is like, it breaks down the search queries, how people found you, but it gives you like hard numbers for the total number of searches that were performed, not just for your ads. So before, for like the search term report, we could see how many people like saw my ad, clicked on it, and it was everything specific to my ads. But what's cool for the search query performance report is now we can see these metrics for that search query, that search term, overall. And then we can see, all right, what's the total volume? And then one of the key pieces is the brand share percentage. So for people who search for this term in Amazon, how much did my brand show up? And then for people who search that term, how many people clicked on it, like as a percentage, and then how many people added it to cart as a percentage, and then how many people purchased it. And so what's really cool with this one is it gets us a bigger perspective overall for one, the total search volume for a certain search term, but then two, how your products perform overall for that search term against your competition, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that is a question that brand owners have been puzzling over for the longest time. I don't know about you, but we get clients asking all the time, like, okay, so how am I doing versus my competitors? Like, I know how I'm doing versus myself. I can track myself year over year, but maybe I have certain top brands, or I'm just interested how I'm doing in my category. And I'm really liking this, not just the search query dashboard specifically, which is a huge one, but then there's also the Product Opportunity Explorer and the brand analytics inside the ad platform. I really like this, like you said, Amazon releasing all of these data points, and I know I just threw a whole bunch, so we'll definitely focus on the search query. But just them really trying to showcase to us, okay, so this is how you're doing versus your market. With as much transparency as they can give you, because obviously, like, they're not about to show they're not going to give you, okay, so the brands that got the clicks, or the brands that are getting the best share, like, here's their actual ASINs and here's their, like, they're still giving you some anonymity, which you're going to enjoy because, you also benefit from that anonymity once you become, better, or more ranked in your category. But that's
Sure.
like, I definitely agree with you. A way for you to say, okay, these are the search queries where I'm winning the most. Because previously what we did, we used third-party tools, which I still think there's validity to third-party tools. Because there's certain ways you can, in some ways they're more friendlier at scale. But we would have to say, okay, so we think this is where we're winning because we see this is, what this third-party tool shows me where I'm ranking. But how much am I winning of that ranking? Am I increasing my ranking? What kind of share am I getting? It was, a lot of it was very inferred. And it's not that the other tools were bad. That's the only data we had access to. And now that we have access to this other, again, first-party data set, It's definitely has a wealth of knowledge as far as like which search queries are performing best for your products, and then what kind of market share you have on those.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And there's some cool ways that we can utilize it too. So, like, and your point is perfect on, all right, how am I doing against my competition? And we can take this to multiple levels with this report. So if we look at the brand share, it's broken down into multiple stages. So somebody types in a search term. It's going to give you your brand share percentage for impressions. So essentially, what percentage of people like see your ad compared to your competitors once they search that specific search term in Amazon. Then you can go further down the funnel. So, okay, say I had a brand share percentage of 10% for impressions. Now you can go further down the funnel and you can look at your click percentage. And what's interesting to see is, was it higher or lower than 10%? Because if you got 10% for impressions, but say 15% brand share for clicks, that means that for whatever reason, when people saw your product pop up, they clicked on it more frequently than your competitors. That's a great sign. If, say, the click percentage is less than the impression brand share percentage, now that means that they saw your product, but they clicked on your competitors more frequently. And so that's immediately a takeaway that we can get, and we can look at our competitors and say, okay, when somebody searches for the search term, why are they clicking on my competitors more? So can I upgrade the title? Does the picture not fully speak to that search term? You put yourself in the mind of the person searching for that term. And you can look at maybe pricing's a lot different. And so maybe your competitor is undercutting you on pricing. But these are all good takeaways to get. And then what you can do is continue to work your way further down the funnel. So we can say, all right, for our cart ad brand share percentage or for our purchase percentage, is it higher or lower than my impression and my click brand share percentage? And what this means is that, say it's higher. So say it was 10% for impressions and clicks. So 1 out of 10 people who search end up clicking compared to your competitors. But now your purchase percentage is a lot higher. Say it's like 15 or 20%. What this means is that your product converts better. So once they're on your product detail page, that converts into a sale more often. Well, this can be an awesome flag for us as a seller to say, all right, if my product's converting better than my competitors, maybe I can get more aggressive on my advertising for these specific terms because I'm turning more of those clicks into sales. So my product's more relevant, and if I get more aggressive on my advertising for these terms, now I can drive up that sales velocity, hopefully increase the organic ranking that I have, and kind of build on that flywheel. And so what's fun for me is looking at the ratios of the brand share percentage throughout the funnel to pinpoint for specific search terms. Am I doing better or worse than my competition? And then from there, you can take specific actions based off of that.
I love that. I love that. Do you mind me quickly just trying to get you to get a little bit more technical when you say like looking at ratios?
Yeah.
How does one exactly how do you do that?
Sure. Yep. So essentially what I'm looking at is, all right, say my click brand share percentage is 10%, but my purchase brand share percentage is 15%. So I know that I only got 1 out of 10 clicks, or I got 10 out of 100 clicks, we'll say. But for people who ended up finally purchasing after typing in that search term, I got 15 out of the 100 purchases. And so what that means is that some people who typed in the search term and clicked on my competitors, they converted into a sale less frequently than they did when they clicked on my product. And so when we're looking at the ratios, it's really like, all right, is my purchase percentage higher than my traffic percentage, my click or my impression percentage? If it's higher, that's great, because that means once people click on it, they're converting into a purchase more often than my competitors. If it's lower, so say my purchase percentage is 5%, but my brand share percentage for clicks is 10%, that's bad. Because that means that, all right, I had 1 out of 10 people click, 10 out of 100 click, but 5 out of 100 only ended up purchasing. And so my competitors are probably taking more. People are purchasing more frequently from my competitors than they are from me. And so that's really how you can use the ratios, is looking, okay, is this higher or lower than further to the left in the report or lower in the funnel, and seeing where you have an advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and I think that's super valuable for the audience, to be able to look at those, like you said, specific numbers and compare one to the other. And I think that's insanely valuable. One quick thing while we're on the subject of purchasing, I was just on a call with a whole bunch of other like agency owners and like their teams, and we were talking specifically over the search query report. I know a lot of people take issue with the purchases and trying to map those to business reports or map those to maybe their search term reports and say like, wait a minute, like this is telling me I only got like 2 purchases, but then I go look at my search term reports for the same date range and like I'm seeing 15 purchases. Like there's something off here. And
Sure.
maybe you have a different conclusion, but I think what we've concluded when we look at the metrics glossary was that the purchases are the search grid purchases. That there's additional widgets. I'm trying to remember, like highly rated products, or that there's other places you'll appear in the page that aren't like the traditional search grid. And then also we know that your advertising can appear on product pages. Like if you go into any of your campaigns, you'll see like placement for products. And so they're not going to include product pages. It's not going to include sponsored brand ads because that's not the traditional search grid. There's so many places we can appear on the search page, organic and ad, that's not a traditional search grid. So from my understanding, this is not going to include the search grid. So if you go and you look at those, don't think like Amazon's giving us crappy data. It's like, no, a lot of these reports, and I know you know this looking at the API, it's how are they measuring this one thing? And then, okay, you bring that understanding to the data that they're providing. It's not that the reports are off. It's, okay, this is how this report is measured, and this is the information contained in it.
Yep. I totally agree. And I love, and we do this all the time too, like it's great to dig into the data and have a level of skepticism for any of the numbers reported to make sure that they truly make sense. At the end of the day, Amazon is pulling this information. It's all coming from like central databases, but the filtering that they had to provide is different. And so trying to match up exact numbers from one report to the next, like this one, it's trying to segment down based off of the specific search query, and there's different ways that they had to do that. And like you're saying, they probably had to exclude some items that maybe get included in some other reports. And so I would say having the level of skepticism is good. At the same time, this is another data set that we have, and there's key actions that we can take from it. So while the skepticism is great, I think this is definitely leading us in the right direction, even if like the absolute numbers are not perfect. So I would take these as very actionable as you go, and at the same time realize that sometimes when we're looking at this, like they're gonna have to filter this data off of different ways, and so the absolute numbers might look a little bit different overall.
I 100% agree. I just know that that's something I've heard from multiple sources of people like trying to take this data and maybe blanket apply it or cross-check it with like other data sets. Whenever I'm faced with these issues, my thing is always, okay, let's make sure we're comparing apples to apples. And the analysis you were talking about on like ratios or, where you have better brand share, better click-through share, that's definitely an apples to apples because you're comparing data from this report that come from another place in this report. So those kind of analysis are always going to be rock solid because you don't have to go out and cross-check with 3 other things that may or may not 100% line up. Like you said, this data is insanely actionable.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Yeah, so I think like key takeaways are, like, all right, so if your click brand share percentage is higher or lower than impression brand share percentage, you can take a look at the actual search results for that search term and see, okay, is my product speaking better? Like if the ratio is higher from click to impressions, or if it's worse, that's very actionable too, because you can see what your competitors are doing better to drive those clicks. And then the same thing now if we have a higher brand share percentage further down the funnel, at that point we know that we can probably get more aggressive with our advertising and try to grow our overall market share there. If it's less, then you can take a look and say, okay, why isn't my product speaking as well to people who search in this specific search term? And there could be a good opportunity there, because now you can see that you're not converting as well as your competitors if that ratio from purchases to clicks is below 1 or less overall.
Yeah. That is a great call out. One other thing that I've found insanely interesting is the fact that you can actually get like what is the average purchase? I forget the name of it, but it's like average purchase value. Basically, like what is the average sale price of an item that was purchased through this particular search query? Because as we know, you can look at your competitors and say like, well, I'm maybe have a lower price here or a higher price here. But this breaks it down by an actual search query level. So one thing we've done, and again, it kind of takes a little bit more time to go through depending on what your search query report looks like. You may or may not be able to find anything, but we'll have certain products where they're just at a higher price point because they're more premium. And one thing that we've done is gone through and analyzed the search query report, looking at the average purchase price of, say that particular search query, because what you'll end up finding is that there's inevitably certain search queries where the purchase price is lower than average. So it's obviously that's almost like a bargain shopper keyword, because the search query, people typing in that with 10, again, it's not always going to be 100% across the board, but if you're trying to figure out, like really dial into, okay, so where can this premium product like maybe have a better chance in the market? Definitely where you are saying, if you're looking at your click share and you're looking at your purchase share, that's going to give you really good insights as well. So I would prioritize those things. We've also found it kind of valuable to look at the purchase price, because we can kind of, again, you're deducing at this point, so I wouldn't say it's as specific or actionable as the analysis you were just talking about, but you can kind of get an idea of what queries might more like premium shoppers be looking at.
Sure. I love that. Yeah, that's a really good use case there. Another fun one that we've had is, especially for seasonal products, this is a really fun report to utilize. And the key reason is that we can see the absolute, the search query volume stat. So how many times have people searched for this term? And say you have a seasonal product. Like, so for my molecular sets that I sold, like it was highly seasonal, because it'd be fall semester and spring semester.
Yeah.
But all colleges start at different dates too. And so this data would have been really helpful to have. Like, we would go through and we'd map out like when all the key starting dates are for different colleges and different areas. But what you could do here is you can switch your reporting range to weekly. And you can go back in time and pull weekly reports week by week. And then what you can do is look at your search query volume amounts and see when that starts to ramp up. And where it gets fun is for highly seasonal products. What we recommend is you want to get going a little bit before that peak happens. And so with advertising, what we typically say is, like, for my molecular sets, like maybe a month prior, I'd really start getting more and more aggressive on my advertising, especially for my main search terms. And while the volume wouldn't be there because we haven't started increasing on the peak yet, what I can do is I can establish my initial like dominance in that keyword or that search term by getting more aggressive. This helps get me more data, so I'm better optimized going into that peak period. But the other key thing is that what it does is, if I can get that sales velocity up prior to that peak coming, I'm going to be sitting in a better position for relevancy for my ads and also for ranking too. Because for ranking, a big piece of it is sales velocity.
Yeah.
And so if I can take that and really establish a higher sales velocity from the start, now once the peak starts, hopefully it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm already showing up above my competitors. I'm typically going to get a higher click share than they will. I'm hopefully going to convert that into more sales, and then it's just going to keep spinning that flywheel. So for highly seasonal products, this has been another fun report because you can trend back in time and week over week performance to get those absolute trends.
Yeah, that's a great call. And then almost layering it with, what you had talked about of analyzing like where you have better click share, where you have better conversion rate share, looking back, as kind of your past seasonality. And then also what you were talking about before, kind of looking at that shopper funnel, which I do really love how it seems like most of our new reports are really breaking out the shopper funnel, which allow you to see, okay, I'm being visible. If I'm seen, is anyone clicking? If they click, is anyone buying? Or are they adding to cart and then buying and adding that extra step? I know I'm a shopper like notorious for like adding 20 things to my cart and then going back and I really need that.
That's awesome. That was one key takeaway that I had getting into this business is I didn't realize people did that. I just personally don't add to cart. And then looking at the add to cart rates versus purchase rates, I was really surprised and honestly confused at like why it was so much higher. But talking to so many people on our team here too, like so many people do that too.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm probably just the weird outlier for not doing that.
Maybe, I'm not sure. I use it as sort of like I want to get my options and then I use my cart to like evaluate the options. So I'm like, oh, that looks pretty good. And of course, it really depends on how much I'm really thinking about my purchase. Like if it's a really quick, like I need tissues, like I probably don't care. Like I'll just purchase those, send it to me immediately. But if I'm looking at, maybe I can't even think of the last thing I bought, but if I'm doing more of analysis, I'll kind of just add all the things to my cart and then just sort of like backtrack off of, okay, then use that as almost like my final comparisons. And I'm also terrible about wish lists. I know Amazon has the option. I just like never view them, so I add like remove from cart where it's like all below the cart, and then I have to inevitably go like clean up that space because there's like 20 things.
That makes sense. I like that. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I use it, which is probably contributing to those weird numbers you're seeing.
No, that's normal behavior. I'm the outlier because I didn't even know that was happening. Yeah, and you hit on like the exact point too. Like, so for seasonal products, now what we can do is kind of combine it with that funnel analysis that we just talked through before, and now you can figure out, all right, where's the key search terms that I really want to get aggressive on? But even for non-seasonal, seasonal products, I keep saying seasonable for whatever reason, but seasonal products, that's where if I'm establishing ranking campaigns or I'm really trying to own certain keywords, I can analyze or I can utilize that exact same approach too. So, yep, you can definitely use it for both cases.
Awesome. Well, this has been phenomenal. I appreciate you giving us, again, just like a really actionable, tangible way to use this report, because I feel like a lot of sellers, they might look at like Amazon's ranking, like, okay, this is what Amazon thinks are my best keywords, and this is great, but like how do I use this report? So I really...
Can I give you one more?
Yes, go ahead.
So one other one that is a lot of fun is this question on brand defense strategies. And should I be protecting my brand and advertising my brand? So hotly debated topic in Amazon advertising and digital advertising and advertising in general. And so the two sides of the story are, all right, one says we should protect our brand at all costs. So somebody came in, they searched for our brand. Why would we let competitors own that space? And let's advertise for our brand. The downside is we're probably paying for clicks that would convert into sales. And so the other side says, well, they're already doing a branded search. And so they're going to scroll down and they're going to find your product and they're going to purchase from it. So typically we fall more in the you should defend your brand, especially as Amazon eats up more and more space up top. But totally see the other perspective too. And so one fun way to test this is it's always the question, if I didn't advertise, how much of those sales are going to go to competitors? Well, with this report, this is now one way that we can attempt to see that. And so what you can do if you're on the fence for advertising for your brand and protecting your brand is you can turn off brand defense campaigns. So no longer advertise for your brand. And then what we can do is we can watch the brand share percentage for those specific terms over time. So say over the next 4 weeks, we can start pulling these reports and see, okay, did my brand share percentage go down? Or did it stay the same? And really the key metric that we should probably be looking at is purchases at the end of the day. So if impressions go down because I'm not advertising as much, like that's okay as long as purchases stay up. And so what we can do is trend that over time to see like the question we always have is, what is the true impact? How many people would just scroll past my ads and purchase from me anyway because they're looking for me specifically? So this is a cool tool to do that. Also take into account that, if you stop advertising at the top, you can slow your sales velocity and there can be a longer term impacts like slipping on organic ranking. But in general, like if you do this for an extended period of time, you can watch that brand share percentage to try to get what is the true impact of my advertising. And then from there, you can determine, does brand defense strategies, does that make sense? Or should we pause and then allocate this to a more general search terms?
I love it. I love that. I appreciate you stopping me and sharing that. That's really cool. Yeah, because there was a new dashboard that came out, and I'm only seeing it in like 1 or 2 accounts. And for us, I don't know why, but a lot of betas get rolled out to like our small accounts, which is kind of weird because I'm like, thanks, but it's not useful in this account. I want it in the other one. But there was a new dashboard that basically shows you your share of voice for branded terms, but specifically in advertising. So I found it very interesting, and I'm actually really stoked about it because a lot of people say like, oh, are we winning our headline ads on our branded terms? And historically, it's a bit difficult to figure that out without like manually checking. Where now there's like a dashboard that aggregates everything at a brand level, and you can like know for sure if you're winning or losing. But the one thing after I looked at it for a while and got excited was realizing, okay, so we know that our ads are winning or losing, but are we really winning or losing purchases? Like you said, there might be like real reasons why we were trying not, to maybe get aggressive on those placements. So maybe those reports aren't as useful to us. But here you're giving us like, especially, as we discovered, like the purchase percentage, that's probably the one thing you really care about. So if you're pulling back on ads, if you have, maybe your competitors getting ad spots, which this report does include those as long as they're, search grid ads. So, top sponsored product ads, etc. But you would have a very tangible way to say, okay, we're definitely losing market share here, so it's not within our best interest. Instead of just assuming that, oh yeah, it's branded, we'll probably win. You have a definite way to track that.
Yeah, exactly. The only way to track it before would be I turn off my brand defense ads, and then I see how sales respond week over week. But it didn't give us the percentage, so other things could have changed. Like search query volume could have gone down for whatever reason or gone up. And so now that we have that percentage, you can better measure it. And that's always been the tricky part, is really like, what is the true impact of my brand defense? This gives us a better way to try to measure that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I super appreciate the share. This has been awesome. Is there anything else I should ask you about before we I close it out?
I think we hit all the major ones for the search query performance report.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you bringing this conversation up, because I didn't have a specific subject, and you brought up the search query report, which I know is on everyone's minds, but now they definitely should have a much better idea of how to use it.
Yeah. Sounds great. Yep, this has been great, and love talking to you as always. And again, thank you for all the awesome content that you're putting out. constantly following you to see what new updates are out there.
Yeah, absolutely the same. Just real quick before we close out, I'd love for those of people listening in who are interested, like, oh, that sounds awesome. You have some really cool things you're doing with data at your ad agency. What's the best place for people to get a hold of you?
So on social, probably the best way is LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me. We're always trying to share cool use cases like this and other things that we're finding. Or else feel free to go to our website at advanced.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.